So some clay, sand, gravel mixed together, and I'm going to mix some of it with water. So this is the stuff that came out of the cement mixer, and it went through the 3 layers of window screen just heaped on top of the barrel. And now I got this square-sided bucket that I like to use because with your wrist back and forth like this, it stirs more than what a round one does. So this is the one that's going to fill up the ice cream tubs. And we put Mr. Strainer in there. We got the special super modified planning spoon. I lost it and the wood part rotted off, and then I found the metal part years later. So I just went to took a little welding machine and they put these half inch pipe on it. Sprayed it yellow so I can find it next time. And there you are. That's pretty good for stirring. And especially it's good for planning. It's my favorite one. This is really nice. I'm not a neat fanatic, but stuff will just get all over everything. Dirt, send it back to the dirt. Put it back with the other dirt. Mix the dirt. Play the pottery. That's the junk that filtered out. There's a few little small, large pieces of sand, tiny pieces of gravel. That stuff, man, when you're throwing on the wheel, cream tub. I don't know if it'll help any to put the shorter one over by the camera to be able to see any more. I hope you can sort of see in there. This plastic one is like just a tiny bit smaller than the metal one. There are such things as really fine strainers. And if you can find one and you're really into processing clay, someone will grab it up. No, I know you're thinking this is too thin. What it's going to do though is it's going to sit, and the water's going to go to the surface. By tomorrow I'll be pouring some excess water off. And then if there's stuff that doesn't want to go through, but you think it is fine enough, I feel like this here with the strainer is in the water. You can't see that, but and then they move around. This is like a gravel sorters do that. They shake loud enough to turn them all away. This thing does a little bit smaller. It doesn't even take 10 pounds. Minuscule. So that's it. Now these will settle. The water will be poured off. They'll be stirred up with that. And then when they're the right thickness, they'll get poured on the board over there. And that is hopefully going to be in this video. So I had the lids on these two ice cream buckets. But you could see if you look at the sides of them, that's how you can tell where the clear water is. Now these came out of the cement mixer yesterday, and they went through, they were poured through a window screen into a bucket, into another bucket through a strainer, and then into these ice cream tubs with yet a finer strainer. And now I'm taking the pot, very gently turning it up, and you can see the sediment is wanting to come out. You want to tilt slowly and steadily if you can, and pour off a bunch of this liquid water. There's just going to be too much of it. You wanted it to be loose. In the cement mixer you needed excess water because you're trying to get all the clay mixed up into the water, and then the rocks and sand are going to go to the bottom, and the screen, the window screen laying across the top of your bucket when you dump out of the cement mixer, that is going to catch the rocks and large gravel that you definitely don't want. Now I'm having a lot of trouble with this wood-fired business. It doesn't work for me the way it does for Andy Ward, but maybe I'm going to learn. And I'm wanting a bunch of sand. You know, see, I'm losing clay there. I'm wanting a bunch of sand in these things because the cracked but sort of okay pots and the one little tiny one that turned out okay were this mix here that has the really sandy stuff. Now here are the two strainers. I'm gonna get in the sun with these. And you can see, I think the metal one on the left there is actually not quite as fine as the plastic one on the right, the black handled one. The one on the left is my first strainer, but that still is after the window screen. And here's some of the, you can see some sand down in there. That's the sand that comes out. It's really fine stuff. This was a test of with some of the ordinary clay. And if I get in the sun, you see that kind of it looks like a hole? Well, you can actually see the level of the clay in there. There's a bunch of clear water in there. It only takes like a day for it to settle down that much. I'm sorry about the terrible camera work. I'm by myself, and I'm just doing what I can do, okay? So after you let it settle and pour off the water off the top, you'll get to this stage here where it's like a milkshake, only thicker. Maybe it's like a milkshake, only thinner, I don't know. This is absolutely non-dairy, just like, yeah. No dairy in here. It's a combination, of course, of water, sand, silt, and clay. And actually the sand is staying because I'm going to try to do this wood fired, which means I need a lot of temper in it, which is sand or ground up clay. And I'm way too lazy to grind up a bunch of clay, so I'm just using the native sand that comes with the clay. And we'll just put our glurp out here like this. And then it's going to take maybe an hour to dry out adequately, or it might take longer than that, or maybe not that long. It depends on how dry that plaster of Paris block there is. This plaster of Paris inside a wood frame. Thoughts on that? If you don't like the price of plaster of Paris, it's like $16 or 25 pounds. It's about half of this. I would just use saccharine. I don't think it matters. Just trowel it out nice and flat. And if I had a pottery shed, I'd probably make a little bit of a workbench, and then nice and sturdy for wedging on, and at the right height so my back wouldn't kill me. And then I would put like a cedar post, in the part that sticks out. If it was like a gravel floor, and if it was a concrete floor, I guess it could be like a 4x4, and then put a masonry anchor into the concrete. But something sturdy like that, maybe 2x4s up on the edge, and then pour it with a sack of saccharine and concrete, premixed concrete. Doesn't matter if it doesn't have to be that brand. And then screed it like you go like this, smoothly with a board. And if you do it just right, the concrete moves and just lays down really flat and cool. And then you just take your trowel and go right across there. And then that would be cheaper. And you could make it big so that you'd have more working space. Now you can't probably really see from there, and I'm not going to move the camera around, but I can see a dullness coming on to some of these thin spots near the edge. This is kind of like cooking pancakes. You can tell from the top about what it's going to look like underneath. And then you just take Mr. Big Fat Spatula, and I might film that, it just depends. But take the spatula and scrape this stuff up and wad it up in a ball, and you can put it like in a plastic bag for a while to let the water move around within the clay, because you're looking for uniformity. So you want the wet spots to soak into the dry spots, and then you wedge it and smooth it all out. And this has already been through before it went in that ice cream tub, it went through my fine, when I go like this here, I get some water on the top of the ice cream tub, and I go like this and that makes the stuff go through. And then if you get a bunch of junk in here and it's getting hard to get stuff to go through, you just get as much as you can and then just whatever, just on something. You can just let it go on the ground. It's just dirt. It's no big thing. So sand, gravel, rocks. So this it's been, I don't know what it's like, an hour. It's not really long enough, but it's like the sun's going to go down on me. And you know, Elton John said not to let that happen. So you see how soft it is? It'll be all sticky. There's no way you can wedge this. But what I'm going to do, I'll take this and put it in another one of these tubs, and then a little 1 gallon ice cream bucket, and go ahead and let the moisture balance out between the pieces. And I'll put the lid on it, and by morning there will be condensation on the lid on the inside, and I'll take that, pour the condensation off. Oh, that's it. The plaster didn't take, it rained 2 days ago. The plaster didn't take as much as we'd have liked it to, but this should be alright. There that is. And I'm going to find a lid, but you can take my word for it, I found a lid, so.